Form allows the user to interact with the application as well as gather information from the user. HTML form elements work a bit differently from other DOM elements in React, because form elements naturally keep some internal state. This form has the default HTML form behavior of browsing to a new page when the user submits the form. But in most cases, it's convenient to have a JavaScript function that handles the submission of the form and has access to the data that the user entered into the form. To achieve this, you have control components. So there are mainly two types of form input in React: uncontrolled component and control component. An uncontrolled input is the simpler of the two. It's the closest to a plain HTML input. React puts it on the page, and the browser keeps track of the rest. With a controlled input, you explicitly control the value that the input displays. You have to write code to respond to key presses, store the current value somewhere, and pass that value back to the input to be displayed. Let's see them in the example.
Code with Sloba.
First, let's build controlled component. In the app component, add a form. And inside of this form, I want to create a simple form with name input and a submit button. So add a label with HTML4 attribute set to name and name text. Below that, add an input with ID of name and type of text. On the bottom, add a button with type of submit and submit text. With a controlled input, you write the code to manage the value explicitly. You'll need to create a state to hold it, update that state when the value changes, and explicitly tell the input that value to display. So let's define a useState hook which can control our state and use the name and setName value for handling this state. Now, whenever our input changes, we want to set our name to the value of our target element. At this point, we hold the value of our input, and if we want to log it, we can do that on the submit event. So add a onSubmit event and call handleSubmit method. In this method, we want to prevent default browser behavior, which would reload our page, and just console log the name. Now let's reload our page. Type the name into the input and submit the form. And we get our name value logged in the console as expected. Notice how manual this is. With every key press, our own change gets called, and we explicitly set name, which re-renders the whole form with the new value. For small forms, this is fine. Rendering 3, 5, or 10 inputs with every key press is not going to slow down the application. If you have a form with tons of input though, this re-rendering might start to matter, especially on slower devices. Let's turn this into uncontrolled form. If we don't want to manually manage the state of our forms, how do we get their values? If coded properly, every form knows about its inputs via name property. So remove the useState hook and remove onChange event. Then in order to read from it, we access it via event target, name of the input, and the value. And we get the same output. So when you should use controlled and when uncontrolled components. Use control components if you want to instantly validate the form on every key press, prevent some characters to be typed, and keep multiple inputs in sync. But if you don't want to re-render your entire form on each input, and if you experience performance issues, use uncontrolled ones. Also, if you want to write less code.
Well, that's all for this React video.
And thanks for stopping by.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Code with Sloba.